Vidiham Gaganasadarshamisham Sarvabhutanivasam Trigunaragita Satchit Brahmarupam Varenyam Vimalaparamahamsam Ramakrishna Harinam Vidaritum Avatirnam Jnana Bhakti Parashanti Pranayadalita Chitram Vimudukha Sadishnam Ritajaja Samadhim Chinmayam Komadangam Vimalaparamahamsam Ramakrishna Harinam. The two terms that Sri Ramakrishna used to use to explain two different types of spiritual experience, or two different levels of spiritual experience. One was Jnana and the other was Vijnana. Jnana and Vijnana. We find these terms used in the Gita and other places. He uses it in a special sense. I haven't really seen any other tradition where it's used exactly the way that he uses it. It's something, we would say, unique to his way of explaining spiritual experience. It ties in very much with the realizations that he had during the time of his, what we call his Vedantic sadhana. Vedantic sadhana, I made some reference to it earlier today. There was a wandering monk from the Punjab named Totapuri who came and initiated Sri Ramakrishna both into sannyasa, so he formally became a monk at that time, the sannyasa, and also into the spiritual practices, sadhana, of Advaita Vedanta. Our monastic order, we consider ourselves part of the Shankaracharya Vaishnava orders because he was a Buddhi. Buddhi is one of the 10 Shankaracharya orders connected with the Sringeri Math. So it's through that lineage, because Sri Ramakrishna had a sannyasa from Totapuri, that we have that connection. It's not a strong connection. Not that our monks all go to Sringeri Math or anything like that. And some will go to visit, just pay respect that way. But when Sri Ramakrishna took initiation with Totapuri and was told to practice this spiritual sadhana, meditation according to Advaita Vedanta, to try to still the mind and make the mind perfectly calm, free from all vrittis, so that he could experience the highest reality, that innermost self, then each time that would happen, the image of the Divine Mother would come before his eyes. Because he was so habituated in his meditation and his whole being, that for him, he thought of God in terms of the Divine Mother. You can say Mother Kali or any aspect of Divine Mother, but his first vision was when he was priest at the Kali temple, and this was the attitude that he used to say, Shantan Bhav, Santan Bhav, the attitude of a child's mother. This was the one that he kept going back to. Even when he did all of his other spiritual practices, when he thought of himself as the servant of God, like Hanuman and the other things we mentioned earlier, whenever everything was done, he immediately went back to that attitude. That was the one that was most suited to him, he was most comfortable with. So he would sit for meditation, and Totapuri would say, now make your mind completely calm and quiet, so that no thought arises, no image, nothing comes up. And Sri Ramakrishna said to him, I keep trying, every time I try, the Divine Mother comes to my mind. So Totapuri got very excited. No, you must do it, because he saw that he was such a qualified aspirant, such a qualified sadhaka. So Totapuri saw there was a little piece of broken glass on the ground, and he took that and he pressed it deep within the area between the eyebrows. And he said, fix your mind there. So Ramakrishna fixed his mind there, and he said, when the image of the Divine Mother came to my mind, then I took knowledge as a sword and cut her in half. So then that disappeared, and immediately he was plunged into Nirvikalpa Samadhi. And this Nirvikalpa Samadhi lasted for 3 days and 3 nights. And the Totapuri was amazed. He said, what took me 40 long years of spiritual practice, here he does it in just a few minutes. So he had that experience where the mind was completely bound, completely merged to this highest realm. They call it the state of Manonasha. The mind is, for all practical purposes, destroyed. Of course, it's not fully destroyed because you come back into it, but completely not functional at that time. No sense of I, no sense of internal awareness, no thought, anything like that. Only this merging in Brahman and this constant flow of bliss. So that coming down from that state, one is completely transformed. So this happened after 3 days. Totapuri somehow brought him down from that state and stayed for some time with him and also received some spiritual instruction from him, and then left. Then Sri Ramakrishna again took up this practice and went into the state of Nirvikalpa Samadhi for 6 months. Now, he used to say this is a state in which normally the body will not last, because there's no way to bring the mind down from that state if there's no I consciousness. Who is there to bring the mind down? So it has to be either, he would say either, in some cases, some past karma can bring the mind down, so prarabdha karma can bring it down, or some good desire to work for the welfare of others, or, in his case, he said, the will of the Divine Mother, because he had work to do in this world. Now, how it happened was, he heard the voice of the Divine Mother, or a voice we could say, he felt it was the Divine Mother. It said, remain in Bhavamukha. Bhavamukha. This is also a term we don't find commonly used. I don't know of any other place where we find this term. This means, as he explained it later, that bring the mind down from this Nirvikalpa state. Bring it down enough so that you can function in this world. You can talk to people, see people and everything, but come down to that point where looking out and seeing the world, you see everything as a divine manifestation. And looking up, you can merge into the infinite absolute reality, or you can see all the visions and different aspects of God, personal God. So, after receiving what he felt was the command of the Divine Mother, he remained in this state of Bhavamukha. Then, to his disciples, many times he tried to explain what this state means, and from the standpoint of metaphysics, from the standpoint of a spiritual type of explanation, he tried to explain what this process is of the mind going higher and higher and higher, and then coming back down. And he always used the example of climbing to the roof. Going by the steps or going by the ladder. He said there are all different ways to get up there, and then coming back down again. So we call this Anulom Vilom. Anulom means if your hairs are going in a certain direction, you go that way, and then coming back, you go the other way. You reverse it. So we can say swimming with the current and then swimming against the current, or going with the grain and then against the grain, something like that. And he used the terms Nitya and Leela, this very colorful way of saying going from the relative to the absolute. The absolute, he called this Nitya. The relative is a divine play, divine sport. So he didn't see things in terms, this universe in terms of Maya. He saw it in terms of play, divine support of the Divine Mother. We'll see the parallels with the Advaita Vedanta and the distinction also. A lot of the distinctions are simply from the point of view of what value we put. Do we put a negative value or a positive value? Do we look upon this universe as something deceptive, something the result of Maya, something which hides the real reality, that we're seeing the snake and not the rope? Or do we say that this is the rope is manifesting itself in this way for us? This is some divine, he used the word Aishwarya, this manifestation of the glory of the Divine Mother. Now, in Advaita Vedanta, we spoke earlier today about the path of Neti Neti. This is a path in which one negates the world. So you would say first negation, then affirmation. One negates the world, trying to isolate, on the one hand, that underlying reality of the universe, and on the other hand, the real nature of the self. So, for all of us non-dualists, this is a dualistic practice, no matter what anybody says, because we're separating everything into two categories: Sat, Asat, the real and the unreal, the eternal and the changeful. So he always looked upon this path of Neti Neti, and this idea of looking upon the world as unreal, as belonging to the level of spiritual practice, sadhana. He never took this Jagat Mitya as a final statement, as a metaphysical truth. In fact, it's the opposite. He was asked one time, is the world then unreal? And he gave a very interesting answer. He said, until we realize God, the world is unreal. After the realization of God, we see the world to be real, because we see it as a manifestation of the divine. The exact opposite of what we expect, and yet not contradicting it. It's just a different value that we put on it. Because why is the world unreal before God realization? Because we don't know the source of it. And we don't see it as a manifestation of the divine. If we say that Brahman can't really manifest itself, then we say it's a manifestation of Shakti. There's one doctrine that's called Shakti Parinamavada, that Brahman itself can't evolve into this universe, but that Shakti can, that aspect of Brahman, that belongs to Brahman. Maya, we're afraid to say it belongs to Brahman. Shakti, we say, yes, this belongs to Brahman, to the Saguna aspect. And the Saguna, this is what Sri Ramakrishna means by Mother, Divine Mother. This Swami Atmajnanananda, Narendra, when he first came to Sri Ramakrishna, he didn't like this idea. In fact, he would make fun of it, the Divine Mother. In fact, one of his letters, he wrote how I hated his Mother Kali of Sri Ramakrishna. And then later how he loved her. The change came over it. But Sri Ramakrishna used to say, no, this Mother Kali, don't get confused. It's not this image with four arms and all of that. He said, what you call Brahman, I call Kali. But it's inclusive of this Shakti, this power to project this universe and uphold this universe and withdraw this universe. So it's a combination of Saguna and Nirguna together. So on some level we can say that the Divine Mother is this Ishvara, or the Saguna Brahman. And at the same time, for him, she was very much a personal, so much so that he felt that she was supplying him with even the very words that he spoke. When he would sing these Ram Prasad songs that say that Mother, I am the chariot, you're the charioteer, I'm the instrument, you're the operator of that, he felt it to be literally true. And he used to use this expression, Rashi Talidai, that Mother would push when they husk rice, that somebody will be working the husking machine, so we'll keep pushing more rice as the husking goes on. And the Divine Mother kept doing that. He never ran out of things to say. He never felt that he was doing anything. He felt everything was with the Divine Mother. So, For him, if we see this universe not in terms of the glory of the Divine Mother, something like manifestation of the Brahman, then it's unreal, because it's based on ignorance. We don't really understand it. After God realization, when we know what it really is, then we can say this world is real. Swami Atmajnananda, how many times I've mentioned his name today? He was a great Advaita, man of the highest Vedantic wisdom. And yet, on his deathbed, he said, Brahma Satyam Jagat Satyam. Brahman is real, the world is real. How can this world be real? This is the glory of Mother, the Divine Mother, manifestation of God. From that point of view, real. So, the dualistic practice of separating everything into two categories, the eternal, the non-eternal, the real, the unreal, the changing, the non-changing, the seer and the seen, subject and object, all of this, as if Brahman itself cuts itself into two parts. So that we have Chid, we have Yada, we have that which is sentient, that which is insentient, or we can say we have Drishya and Drashta, the object and the seer, or the Kshetra, the field and the knower of the field. Everything, so we're breaking, so it's perfectly dualistic with the idea of leading us to the ultimate reality. So we're trying to peel off the skin of the onion to get to the inside. Now, so Sri Ramakrishna said, yes, this is one spiritual path. That if we do that, the Brahman has to be something other than this changeful external universe, and in the Atman, the self. If we want to get to the real nature of the self, we have to peel off all of these coverings. So first we peel off this physical body, Annamaya Kosha, then Pranamaya Kosha, Manomaya Kosha, Vijnanamaya Kosha. One by one, the layer of the mind, of the intellect, of the memory, of the subconscious, Anandamaya Kosha, all of them. And what remains is that ultimate reality. This takes us to the roof. This is what he calls Jnana. Now, for most of the great teachers, acharyas and everything, they end up here. This is where we go. The roof is the highest that we can reach. For Sri Ramakrishna, it's the highest we can reach, but if we come down from there, we see everything transformed. So coming down, what we see, we're not on that roof level anymore, but we see the world with new eyes, and it's actually a more mature spiritual attitude. Going up, it's this dualism of the real and the unreal. Coming down, we see everything is real. Everything is a manifestation of the divine. Everything can be worshipped. So he saw this manifests in two ways. One, each and every individual, we see the divine presence. So he saw God dwelling within everyone. Other is this physical, what we call this physical universe, which we said was unreal. He sees it as either Chidghana. This Chidghana is a very interesting concept. It means as if consciousness gets congealed into a visible form. I think of it sometimes as a cloud. What is a cloud? How is the chemical makeup of a cloud different from the chemical makeup of the sky? The sky is just the air molecules, and it'll have a certain amount of moisture in it, but somehow that moisture can combine in a certain form. We're not adding anything other than the sky. It's all the same. There's nothing new about it. It's not that we find some other material to make a cloud, right? But somehow it takes a visible form. This is how we saw the universe. As this Chidghana, as if this consciousness condenses and takes some visible type of form. This was his experience of things. So sometimes he would say, it's like looking at artificial fruit that's made of wax. Each fruit looks different in everything, but I see substance is one. And for him, that was a divine substance. So that means everything is sacred. There was a song that Sri Ramakrishna was very fond of. It's a very nice song. It's actually a Sufi song that was written by this Zafar. He was the last Mughal emperor of India. It's a very beautiful song that I've joined my heart to thee. All that exists art thou. So wherever I look, I only see thee. It's a very beautiful way of combining this highly Advaitic view of the world. Everything is divine, but highly devotional. Because the devotee, the lover of God, is seeing everything, seeing the face of the beloved. Of course, the Sufi, they won't think so much in terms of Divine Mother, but they'll have this concept of the beloved. Even though it's impersonal, and even though there's no form, still, this relationship is a loving type of relationship. So, what Sri Ramakrishna calls the state of Jnana is a more mature type of state. This is after reaching the roof and coming back down, when one sees everything as a manifestation of the divine and sees God dwelling within all beings. Now, he has this doctrine of the ego, which is also a very wonderful, very helpful idea. We hear all of the time that this ego is the obstacle. The reason why we don't see God is that the ego is blocking it somehow. And he would give some examples. If we're trying to bring water to the field for irrigation, then there will be a reservoir that's on high ground, and the field will be on the low ground. And while we're digging the ditch, digging the channel, then we block it off. We keep some type of what do they call it? Floodgate, huh? Some type of gate there. And then once we dig the channel and everything, then we can lift it, and the water automatically comes. We don't have to do anything after that. So what's blocking it is this ego. He gives other examples. It's like a stump, a tree stump that grows up in front of the door of a house. Because of that, we can't open it. So he says, yes, this ego is the rascal. He uses that term, this rascal ego, that prevents us from having the vision of the divine, from seeing our real nature. It covers everything in a very negative way. But he says that the solution is not to try to eliminate the ego, because this is something that will come back the second that we're not thinking about it. We analyze it, and we see that there's nothing real about it. Then the second we stop analyzing it, comes right back. There's a very nice illustration given by Ramana Maharshi. He says the ego is like the uninvited guest at a wedding, the gate crasher. So there's a wedding, and somebody shows up, and he's drinking too much, and he's eating too much, and he's stuffing himself, and it's very obnoxious. And the husband side of the family thinks that the bride side is invited him, the bride thinks the groom side is invited him. Nobody knows who he is, and they look at each other, and they say, did you invite him? No. Did you invite him? No. As soon as the crasher realizes he's going to be caught, he sneaks out the back door. So he says this ego is like that. When we search for it, then it'll disappear. Actually, if we search for it, we won't find it. Sri Ramakrishna says, try to find this ego, search for it, you'll find God in its place. There was a famous French philosopher named Sartre. He also had a very similar story. He said this ego, he's like a thief who goes into the tavern and starts bragging about all of the things that he's done, how many burglaries he's committed and everything. And then somebody says the police are coming. So he sneaks out the back door. As soon as they leave, he comes back in again. So Sri Ramakrishna says this is the nature of the self. It's like a pond covered with algae, that you push it aside, you see the perfectly clear water, then it comes right back, covers it over again. So his solution is that don't try to get rid of this. Try to create what he calls the right ego. And we talked about it this morning. This is what we form a relationship with God. We think of it in terms of one of the attitudes that we have, a child of God, something like that. But he says, after God realization, when we come back, then this sense of I also comes back. It'll be transformed. It'll be, he says, it'll have the appearance of the ego. And he gives two nice examples. One, he says if you have a string, and the string's lying on the ground, and it has different curves and everything, so it has a certain shape to it, and you put a match to it, and you'll see that the whole thing will burn up. It'll turn into kind of a trail of ash that has the same shape. It looks like the string has the same shape, but you can't tie anything with it. And if you puff on it, the whole thing blows away. Or he says you have a sword made of stainless steel. Chopped up into pieces with it. You touch it to the philosopher's stone. Chintamani, or you touch it there. It turns to gold. It has the same shape, but it can't be used in battle. It can't be used to harm anyone. It's too soft. So he says that this right ego that we have after God realization just has the appearance of an ego, but it reestablishes us in a relationship with God. And he says the nature of that ego depends upon the nature of our spiritual practice, the nature of our realization. So he gave the example of Shankaracharya, after God realization, kept this ego of knowledge. So that meant that his view of the world would be one where he's in constant realization of his oneness with reality, and his world will look hazy to him, dreamlike. He won't give too much value to it. Even though Shankaracharya did more for the modern day Hinduism than any other single person. We may say that he says that the world is unreal, but look what he did. He set up the whole modern monastic system. He reestablished the whole Vedanta philosophical system through argumentation and everything. He reestablished temple worship in India. He brought back the Upanishads. He wrote all of the commentaries, did all of these things. So we shouldn't take it too literally that he thought this world was just like a dream. He saw this changing and transitory. Anyhow, he kept this ego of knowledge. For a devotee of God, he said they kept this ego of devotion. So for Sri Ramakrishna, again, he was reestablished in this idea of being a child of God. But the state of Bhavamuka, he said, it's like a boat that can go back and forth from one side to the other. So he would go, sometimes the mind would get merged in that Brahmagyan, that highest state. And then sometimes it would come down and he would see everything as a manifestation of the divine. Sometimes he would have an in-between state. He would talk about these three different states. Sometimes he would be lost in ecstasy in that realm of the gods and goddesses or other devotional moods. He would go into what they call the Bhava Samadhi. The Bhava Samadhi, you won't find this in any of the classical texts on yoga or anything like that. It's neither Nirvikalpa Samadhi nor Savikalpa Samadhi, although it'll be more like Savikalpa Samadhi, but it's a state where one is unconscious of this external universe and dwells in a different realm, a realm of divine forms, whether it's due to subjective devotional attitudes that we have, or whether these actually have some objective reality, subjective, objective, the meanings seem to disappear in that state. So his mind would go back and forth. So this was that state of Bhavamuka. And this is how we dwell in those final years. So he used to talk, get their colors the way we live in the world. Whether we have this ego of knowledge or if it's an ego of devotion, it'll take all different types. For him it was to the Divine Mother. For others it can be in any form that we can think of. So this is a very beautiful teaching that he had, this state of Vijnana, which he considered to be the, almost you could say, the final word in spiritual experience. I would like to devote the rest of the time to questions. It can be about this or it can be about anything. This is a free satsang, free period. If anybody has anything, topic that you would like to raise, we have time.
Earlier today, you were speaking about the witness, and you briefly mentioned emptiness. And I was wondering if you could expand on what you meant by the emptiness and if it's different from the witness.
We have two terms that are often used, and there's a lot of confusion. One is this emptiness, shunyata, emptiness, and the other is purna. Purna means full. And sometimes the Hindu tradition and the Buddhist tradition, they argue about these things. Because the Buddhist tradition emphasizes this idea of emptiness. And the Hindu tradition emphasizes this idea, or Vedantic tradition, of fullness, completeness, perfection, infinity, something like that. Now, on the one hand, these are ways that we try to explain the nature of the Godhead, the ultimate reality. And those who take the shunyata literally to mean that there's nothing there. This is one interpretation. So in the Buddhist tradition, we do have certain schools which really have no conception of what we call Atman or Brahman, the higher self, or this ultimate reality. They'll take it almost literally that these things are non-existent. The other schools will take shunya as meaning that this Brahman is empty. And the same thing with the witness or this pure consciousness. If we look at this distinction between subject and object, in Western thought, generally, when we talk about the subject, what are we talking about? We have a psychologist here. Who will be the subject?
Observer.
We're talking about the subject. Huh?
Observer.
Huh?
Witness or the observer?
No. Observer, yes. But who is the observer? The observer will have all of these psychological qualities and traits and characteristics. Right? We're trying to, in Western thought generally, that people are trying to find out who they are. You notice, I want to find out who I am. The real me. What do we mean, the ego me? Right? Yeah. The ego me. Who is the real me? Oh, I am the one who, when I was very young, my mother insulted me and that's this trauma, and now I'm afraid of this and that, and all of that. The concept of the witness in Vedanta is completely different. The subject is not the individual. That belongs to the mind and to the subconscious and all of that. The subject will be empty. Consciousness is perfectly empty if we understand that everything that is within consciousness is external to consciousness. So it sounds like a contradiction. Huh? Everything within consciousness is external to consciousness. That means that nothing that appears before consciousness belongs to it. If you look at a mirror, will you say that that image belongs to the mirror? Is it in that mirror? We see it there. Everything we see in the mirror is external to the mirror. So consciousness is like that. Can't see.
So the consciousness is the
empty. It has no content to it. Everything that we take as being content. Everything belongs to mind. So there's a sharp distinction between consciousness and mind. Also, you're okay. Yeah. So if we can realize the emptiness of the self, then we're realizing the absolute nature of the self. If there's nothing particular there, then there's no distinction between who you are and who I am. There's only this oneness there. This is the level of oneness. And this is one practice. Every time something comes into the mind, even it says who I am. If some idea of who I am comes into the mind, that's not who I am. If it comes into the mind that I'm a monk with a wrong that I'm male instead of female, at a certain age, this and that, that's not who I am. I'm that consciousness that is aware of that.
And at that time you would just say, this is a thought, and you would just release it.
This is a
the
thought.
ego is a thought.
They think how freeing it is. This ego, which we feel is such a bondage to us, it's just an idea. It's such a wonderful concept. This ego is just an idea. And it's fluid. If it's something real and solid, it's going to be permanent and unchanging. This ego, it comes and goes, it disappears, it changes. We get involved in a book, we're not really aware of anything else. Where is the ego at that time? And our whole sense of who we are, it changes constantly. Because it's based on what our favorite book of the day is. It's based on what all of our opinions and things, belief system and everything, which really can undergo a change at any time. So the most important distinction when we do this discrimination between the seer and the seen is that the ego falls on the side of the object, not on the side of the subject. Whereas in Western psychology and philosophy, generally the ego falls on the side of the subject. In fact, they'll use these terms, the transcendental ego and other things in Western philosophy. But Vedanta is very clear on this. That the ego is an object. I mentioned Sartre before, this French philosopher, because he's the closest I've seen in his understanding of consciousness. He says that the ego is an object in the world like any other object in the world. Now, of course, it's not exactly like a table or anything. What he means is that it's also an object for consciousness. When we say kshetra, what is the kshetra? What is the field? When we have this chapter 13 of Gita, we talk about the knower of the field and the field. What do we mean by field? It says idam shariram, this body. But this body isn't just this physical body, it's the subtle body also. The subtle body and the causal body. That means all of our subconscious, all of our thoughts, all of these things belong to the field. And we're the knower of the field. We're the ones who are witnessing all of this. So the nature of the self is that it's perfectly empty. That doesn't mean that it's non-existent. It's perfectly empty the way a mirror is perfectly empty that way. If a mirror has any content to it, we won't see ourselves in it. If you paint something on it, right? It's no longer functioning the way it has to function. So everything within consciousness is external to consciousness. Take this idea, and this for me is helpful. Swami Atmajnanananda talks in these terms. There's something that they call chidakasha and something they call chittakasha. Chidakasha is akasha means space. The space of pure consciousness and the space of relative consciousness. And they're coextensive. They're not two different spaces. So if we think about outer space, what we think of as the outer space will be this, like chittakasha, that'll be empirical space. That means that it has stars and planets and air molecules and all sorts of things in it. This is outer space. But all of these things, where do they exist? Where does each and every air molecule exist? It exists in pure space. And that pure space is empty space. Right? Now we say, oh, there's a chair here. So that can't be empty space. There's a chair, right? No. It exists in empty space. Otherwise it wouldn't fit in there. if there was something else there. It's occupying empty space, but that's the ground. So this empty space has no gaps in it. It's not simply the space between two molecules. The molecules themselves are within empty space. So that means this consciousness is perfect and pure and all-pervasive and everything. Each thought that comes into it is like an air molecule that exists within space, only within the space of your consciousness. So, coextensive, they're not two separate things. You can't have anything that doesn't exist within space, but you can have empty space. In fact, the space between two air molecules, if there's nothing in between, what's the distance that it occupies? If we want to take it from the two molecules, then we can measure it. If we eliminate the two molecules, it's infinite. There's no way to measure it. So, empty consciousness is infinite. Empty consciousness is Brahman itself. That's the mind taking the form of Brahman. Did that?
That was great, thank you.
Just a quick clarification. Are you using the term devoid of content synonymous with devoid of attribute, or are you just making a distinction between those two? Because we also say
both
one
are
is
true.
devoid of attributes.
Yes.
But devoid of content, I mean, those are two different concepts. Are you thinking of them as synonymous, or they are different?
Parallel. We have a similar situation that one is any thought that comes into consciousness. The other is any quality that we can assign to ourselves as individuals. That quality will belong to the mind or to the personality, not to consciousness itself. Just as the thought will belong to the mind, not to consciousness itself. So they occupy two different areas, we could say, but within one larger space. So, yeah, both will be true in that sense, that consciousness is, so what we find out in consciousness is transcendent. That space doesn't have any space. There's no location for space. Try to imagine if this universe doesn't exist, nothing exists. What happens to the concept of space? It's just a concept, it disappears. What happens to the concept of time? There's nothing absolute. Time is perfectly relative also. Even if this physical universe is there, and there's no awareness, then where is time? Time, there has to be mind, there has to be an observer to know the change of one moment to the next moment. And it's not that there even has to be change. Suppose there's no change whatsoever. The mind is aware of it. The mind is aware of boredom. Nothing's happening. I'm sitting here waiting for the movie. It's just a blank screen. Even the mind is aware of the memory of the same thing that happened over and over and over again. So it's the change, this idea of time, it's not even based on external change. It's based on the mind, the concept of mind. And space is based on the actual transitory nature of external objects. If there are no objects, then there's no space. But it's not that it disappears or goes anywhere. Because that's where the next creation will find itself. Only these things turn into just concepts for us.
But Swamiji, when we say that the causal body,
yes,
only thing eternal is the consciousness. But when we talk about the causal body, we are talking about the mind and the intellect. So how are they coloring our consciousness?
Let me try to explain. There's a theory in Vedanta of 3 different bodies. They use the term bodies. Only one is the physical body, Stula Sharira is the physical body. Then we have Sukshma Sharira, which is what you're talking about. It's not the causal body, it's the subtle body. And then the Karana Sharira, the causal body. Now, we have these 3, which correspond roughly to the 5 Panchakosha body. But the physical body, a lot of this has to do with the 3 states of consciousness, waking, dream, and dreamless sleep, in order to explain how they function. But in this waking state, we have this physical body, which is composed of 5 elements, which is composed of an external. We know all of that. Then subtle body which is the mind and the intellect, and
Consciousness.
not consciousness. There's no consciousness in the subtle body. The subtle body contains all the instruments that can access consciousness. So we have a light bulb, the external port will be the physical body, filaments inside, which can light up. That'll be like the subtle body, something like that. So the subtle body will be, we can say, the instruments. This is all from some people when you kind of dualistic thinking. It doesn't matter. So generally we'll say that this is Chitta, Ahankara, Buddhi, Manas, these four things, the subtle body. This is what will leave the physical body according to the concept of reincarnation, and will occupy a new body in the future. It's the subtle body that leaves. Now, what is this causal body? All of the experiences that we have remain with us. Some will remain in our active awareness. Some will remain in our memory bank. Some will even get hidden so that we don't remember them, but they may exert an influence on us. And then we have all of these experiences that remain with us in the form of samskaras. That means that they exert their influence through different traits and qualities that we have, and different tendencies and impressions and all of that. The causal body is used to help explain what exists in the state of dreamless sleep. In dreamless sleep, what happens to the active cognitive life of the mind, all of the thoughts that we're used to having, all of that, it goes into a causal state. If and when we fall asleep, if it disappeared, where would it come back from? It has to lodge itself somewhere. So we have different theories in Western psychology, subconscious, unconscious, different things like that. The dream world will come out of that. These will be things that are kind of a reservoir for all of the experiences of a lifetime. So actually we say the subtle body is what leaves and enters a new body. It'll be the subtle body and causal body. And in fact, it may be that one theory is that there's a stage in which there's perfect forgetfulness for the individual soul, so that when it enters the body of a child, it doesn't remember. That most of us have no memory of the past lifetime. So that means that everything is in the causal body at that time. But the samskaras manifest itself in the subtle body. Now they may manifest themselves in the physical body from the point of view that if we had a tendency towards being a good athlete, we may be born in a family that will give us a body that's an athletic body. This is all theoretical, but see how everything nicely fits in together that way. So the self is beyond all of these bodies. So in this Mandukya Upanishad, we have this theory of these three states of consciousness, these three bodies, but there's something called Turiya. Turiya is the fourth. So the fourth will be this state of Samadhi. Here we go to Samadhi, where the mind is also not functioning, but it's the transformative state. It's somehow similar but different. This causal body is also known as Anandamaya Kosha. It's blissful because it's the closest to the self. It's the last remaining layer when we peel off the onion. It's closest, it's shining through, but it's characterized by ignorance. We don't have that self-awareness in that state. So I'll tell them this thing. Those who are in Washington have heard these things many times. But I'll tell this very nice explanation. This was given by one of the disciples of Swami Parveshananda, of the Holy Father, Swami Parveshananda. he was trying to explain these different states of consciousness: the waking state, the dream state, dreamless sleep state, and that state of enlightenment, samadhi state, buddhi state. He said it's as if someone were sitting in a room and the lights are on and the furniture and everything is in the room and the windows are open and you can see everything inside the room and you can see everything outside the room. So everything outside the room means the senses are functioning, we can see external objects. Everything inside the room means that our thought life is active. We can be remembering things from the past or imagining things. So that's all there. Then the dream state comes, and as if somebody shuts the windows and the blinds, and we don't see anything outside. We can only see the internal things. So that creates its own kind of internal universe. So the lights are on, and we see everything inside, and that's the dream state. And he says the dreamless sleep state is where everything is in the room. Shades are down, but the light is turned off. Now, we don't see anything then, but when we turn the lights on, everything is the way it was before. So it goes into the causal state, but then it comes back the same. So we're not different people. We're not transformed in any way. If we have a nightmare, we may feel a little funny. If we have a nice dream, we may feel happy. Otherwise, no real transformation takes place. Now, this samadhi state, he says that the shades are down. We don't see anything outside. All of the furniture is removed from the room, but the light is on. So in both cases, we're not seeing anything. But one, because the lights are off, and the other because everything is empty. So we have full awareness of what's happening, and that's the state. We may not be able to understand very well how this works. The mind is empty in both states, but how one is so transformative. But we know that those who enter into this state of samadhi or enlightenment, how they're filled with bliss, filled with joy. And we have three things, again from this Mundaka Upanishad that happen. One, all the knots of the heart are untied. That means that there's no more bondage for us. Then all of our doubts are removed. Then the third thing is all of our karma gets exhausted. It gets burned up. So whatever karma was there that would have led to a future birth is gone. It's burned up. So Thakur Ramakrishna says it's like burnt seed. You can plant them in the ground if you want to, but nothing will grow. They've been burned already. So these things happen. If we see someone who says they've had samadhi and there's no transformation that takes place, then we know it's not authentic. It's not the real thing. Otherwise, they won't be the same. The appearance may be the same, but they won't be able to do anything harmful to anybody. They'll have love for all the beings. They'll be different. The transformation will be a very radical type of transformation. But consciousness doesn't belong to any of these three states. Consciousness illumines all of them. The subtle body, it's like, so another example is Ramakrishna gives, that this physical body, it's like a bowl, and the mind, subtle body, is like water. So it's filled with water. And the sun is consciousness. When we see the reflected sun in the water, we may think that it belongs to the water. We may think that it's even an outgrowth of the water. Science will try to prove that the water is the creator of consciousness, that our DNA and all of that combines in such a way that it can create consciousness somehow. The other position will be that we're creating the instrument that is able to reflect that sun of consciousness. That sun of consciousness is absolute, it'll be there regardless. But consciousness is not a characteristic or a quality that belongs to mind, to water. It's something transcendent. absolute self exists. Swayam Prakash. And it doesn't require any other light. See, the light of the moon requires the light of the sun. What light do we need to see the light of the sun? The sun is its own light. It's through the light of the sun that we see the sun. So through the light of consciousness that we have that realization.